"I am Jesus," said little girl, promising to make Millionaire's 3 crippled sons walk again for $1,000. Then he gives her the money and discovers something shocking. Comment giving a score from 0 to 10 for my story. Your opinion is very important, and subscribe to my channel to support my work. I count on your help. The afternoon sun sliced through the windows of the private hospital as the widowed millionaire in his 30s emerged from the automatic doors, carrying one of his 3 4-year-old sons in his arms. The other 2 followed in special wheelchairs, pushed by dedicated nurses who had been with them for months. Their angelic faces contrasted with the deep sadness he carried in his chest since losing his wife 2 years earlier, in a tragedy that still haunted him every night. The consultation had been another disappointment. The neurologist, with his measured professional tone, repeated the same words he had heard for years. "There's nothing more we can do. The neurological damage is irreversible." His sons were born with a rare condition that affected their nerve connections, preventing them from walking or having proper motor control of their legs. Despite all his fortune accumulated through stock market investments, the money seemed useless in the face of the relentless medical reality. That's when she appeared. A 4-year-old beggar girl, but so frail she looked barely 2, approached him with determined steps. Her bare feet touched the hot asphalt of the sidewalk, and her torn, dirty clothes told a story of abandonment that made his heart clench. But there was something in her eyes that immediately unsettled him, a strange gleam, as if she possessed knowledge she shouldn't. "Sir," she said, in a clear voice that contrasted with her desolate appearance, "I can make your boys walk again." He stopped abruptly, almost tripping. The nurses also froze, staring at the small figure that had appeared out of nowhere. The street traffic continued around them, but time seemed to pause at that specific moment. "What did you say?" he asked, his voice rougher than he intended. The girl moved closer, her large, penetrating eyes fixed on his. "Your sons will walk again. I have special powers, but I need $1,000. A bitter laugh almost escaped his lips. Another person trying to take advantage of his despair, he thought. He had already encountered dozens of charlatans over the years. Healers, mystics, people who promised miracles in exchange for absurd amounts of his wealth. But something in the child's demeanor made him hesitate. "You don't understand," she continued, with a confidence that was disconcerting for her age. "I'm special. God gave me a gift to help children like your sons, but I need the money first." The nurses exchanged uncomfortable glances, whispering about calling security. One of them reached out to shoo the girl away, but he raised his hand, signaling her to wait. There was something about this situation that stirred him in an inexplicable way. His sons, in his arms and in the chairs, looked at the girl with childish curiosity. One of them, the most communicative despite his limitations, pointed at her and smiled. It was the first time in weeks that he had seen his boys show genuine interest in something. "How do I know you're not lying?" he asked, crouching down to be at the girl's level. She gently touched the hand of one of his sons, and the boy laughed, a sound he hadn't heard in a long time. "Because I've helped other children before. And because you're going to believe me, even without understanding why." Her words hit him like a punch in the stomach. That's exactly what he felt, an inexplicable compulsion to believe this child, even knowing it was impossible. Maybe it was the accumulated despair, or maybe it was the way his sons reacted positively to her presence. He looked at his cash reserves in his wallet. He always carried cash for emergencies. $1,000 was a negligible amount compared to his net worth, but it represented a fortune for a girl living on the streets. If it was just another attempt to exploit him, at least he would have helped a child in need. "If I give you the money," he said slowly, "what exactly is going to happen?" "Tomorrow your sons will move their legs for the first time," she replied with an absolute certainty that made him shiver. "They'll take small steps in the hospital room, and you'll know I told you the truth." His heart raced. How did she know his sons were returning to the hospital the next day for more tests? This information wasn't public, and he hadn't mentioned anything about the medical schedule during the conversation. Unable to explain his own actions, he took the $1,000 from his wallet and handed it to the girl. She held the money with small, trembling hands, but her eyes retained that strange serenity. "Thank you, sir. Your boys will be all right now," she said, before quickly turning and disappearing into the crowd on the sidewalk. He stood there for long minutes, questioning what he had just done. The nurses looked at him with concern, but said nothing. His sons seemed more animated than they had been in weeks, babbling and pointing in the direction the girl had disappeared. That night, he couldn't sleep, tormented by the memory of that child's eyes and the disturbing feeling that something fundamental in their lives was about to change forever. The morning arrived carrying a tension he couldn't name. The millionaire had spent the night awake, alternating between irrational hope and the certainty that he had been conned by a child who was too clever for her own good. His Bitcoin investments had performed well overnight, but even the profits couldn't distract him from the anxiety that consumed his thoughts. At the hospital, the medical team prepared the boys for another battery of routine tests. The lead neurologist, a 60-year-old man with decades of experience, reviewed the charts with the weary expression of someone who had seen all kinds of unfounded hopes dashed against clinical reality. "Today's tests are just for monitoring," he explained to the nurses. "We don't expect any significant changes in the boy's neurological condition." But when they positioned the first boy on the examination table for the procedure, something extraordinary happened. The child, who had never demonstrated any motor control in his legs, contracted the muscles in his right thigh. The movement was subtle, almost imperceptible, but the specialized nurse noticed it immediately. "Doctor, you need to see this," she whispered, her voice trembling with disbelief. The doctor approached, skeptical. He had witnessed involuntary muscle spasms before. They weren't uncommon in complex neurological cases. But when he gently touched the boy's leg, the response was unmistakable, conscious, controlled movement. "This is impossible," he muttered, checking the reflexes more closely. Previous tests showed irreversible damage to the spinal cord. With the second son, the phenomenon repeated itself. And with the third, the reaction was even more impressive. The boy managed to flex both legs when asked, his little eyes shining with joy as he realized that his body was finally obeying his commands. The millionaire watched everything paralyzed, the beggar girl's words echoing in his mind like a fulfilled prophecy. His hands trembled as he held his cell phone, unable to decide whether to film the moment or simply absorb the magnitude of what he was witnessing. "I need to do new neurological exams immediately," declared the doctor, his voice filled with scientific bewilderment. "Something has changed in these children's nervous structure, something that defies everything we know about spinal cord injuries." During the following hours, while the boys underwent a series of more detailed tests, the millionaire left the hospital in search of the girl. He walked the streets of the area, questioned homeless people, visited squares and places where beggars used to gather. But she had simply disappeared, as if she had never existed. In the late afternoon, when he returned to the hospital, he found his 3 sons taking small, wobbly steps through the pediatric ward, supported by nurses who were crying with emotion. It was a spectacle that no medical professional present had ever imagined possible. "Daddy, look!" shouted one of the boys, managing to take 3 consecutive steps before losing his balance in a nurse's arms. "My legs work!" The medical team was in a state of shock. Whispered conversations filled the corridors about the most extraordinary case they had ever witnessed. Some spoke of misdiagnosis, others mentioned rare, spontaneous recoveries, but no one could adequately explain the speed and completeness of the improvement. During the following weeks, the millionaire hired private investigators to find the girl. He spent a small fortune of his assets on advertisements in local newspapers, offering rewards for information about her whereabouts. His assets in investment funds grew automatically, but he barely paid attention to the financial reports that arrived daily. The search became an obsession. He needed to understand what had happened. He needed to thank that mysterious child who had restored his son's mobility. But it was as if she had dissolved into thin air, leaving only the memory of her penetrating eyes and her impossible words. His sons progressed spectacularly. In a few weeks, they were running through the garden of his mansion in the most prestigious area of the city, playing like any healthy 4-year-old children. The doctors remained perplexed, performing weekly exams that showed a neurological regeneration that contradicted all medical books. It was during one of these follow-up appointments that the neurologist made a disturbing observation. The nerve connections that were damaged since birth have simply regenerated, he explained, showing the images from the most recent tests. It's as if their nervous system had been completely rebuilt overnight. In 40 years of my career, I've never seen anything like it. 3 months had passed since the encounter. The millionaire had almost given up on finding the girl when he decided to visit a local orphanage to make donations in gratitude for what he considered a miracle. It was a modest institution, maintained by dedicated nuns who cared for abandoned children with limited resources. When he entered the main courtyard, his heart stopped. There she was, playing quietly with other children, as if she were just another ordinary orphan. She wore clean clothes provided by the institution, her hair was combed, but they were unmistakably the same eyes that had hypnotized him months before. "You!" he exclaimed, approaching quickly. The girl raised her face, but her expression was one of complete confusion. There was no recognition in her eyes, no sign that she remembered him or the encounter that had changed their lives forever. "Hi, sir," she said, with the innocence typical of a 4-year-old. "Do you know the nuns? They are very kind to me." The world seemed to spin around him. The girl who had promised to heal his sons, who had spoken with a supernatural wisdom, now looked at him as a complete stranger, without any memory of the events that had marked his family so deeply and inexplicably. The adoption process took 6 months to complete. During this period, the millionaire visited the girl at the orphanage weekly, always hoping that she would show some sign of recognition or memory of the encounter that had changed their lives. But she remained just an ordinary child, playing with old dolls and drawing with crayons, without any trace of the mysterious figure who had approached him in front of the hospital. The nuns said that she had been left at the door of the institution on a rainy morning, without any explanation or identification documents. They found only a scribbled note saying that the parents could no longer take care of her. It was a sad story, but unfortunately common in that place, dedicated to welcoming abandoned children. When he finally managed to take her home, the adaptation surprised everyone. The girl integrated perfectly into the routine of the mansion, forming immediate bonds with her 3 adoptive brothers. It was as if she had always belonged to that family, playing in the spacious gardens, exploring the luxurious rooms with the natural curiosity of a 4-year-old. His sons adored her from day one. They ran together through the yard, competed in children's games, shared meals prepared by the team of cooks he kept. It was touching to see how the boys, now completely healthy, protected their younger sister with genuine affection. But during the first weeks of living together, small details began to bother the millionaire. The girl sometimes stopped in the middle of a game and stared blankly into space, as if she were hearing voices that no one else could perceive. On other occasions, she spoke to herself in languages that none of the household staff could identify, melodious sounds that sounded like words, but of completely unknown origin. One night, he found her sitting in the library, leafing through an advanced medicine book that he had left on the table. The child pointed to complex diagrams of the nervous system, muttering technical words that she shouldn't know. "Where did you learn these words?" he asked, sitting down next to her. The girl raised her eyes with a confused expression. "What words, Daddy? I was just looking at the pretty drawings." When he showed her the pages she had been examining, she showed complete disinterest, turning her attention back to the toys scattered on the floor. It was as if moments of impossible knowledge alternated with periods of absolute childhood normality. The months passed, and his sons continued to evolve in an extraordinary way. Not only had they completely recovered their mobility, but they demonstrated motor coordination and physical endurance above average for children of their age. They ran marathons in the garden without tiring, climbed trees with impressive agility, played sports with a natural ability that left the hired physical education teachers amazed. During a routine medical checkup, the neurologist made an even more disturbing discovery. The exams showed that not only had the nerve connections regenerated, but the entire neurological system of the boys had been optimized in a way that medicine considered impossible. "It's as if their brains have been rewired," the doctor explained, analyzing the detailed images. "The synapses function with an efficiency we rarely see even in perfectly healthy adults. Your sons haven't just healed. They've become neurologically superior." That same night, the millionaire was awakened by strange sounds coming from the girl's room. He found her sitting on the bed, speaking in a low voice, but this time he could distinguish some words. She mentioned names he had never heard, described specific places with details impossible for someone who had spent the last few months only inside the mansion and the orphanage. Even more disturbing, she spoke about the lives of each of her brothers before they even met, intimate details about their personalities, fears, and dreams that she couldn't know through normal interaction. She mentioned the hospital where they were born, the nurses who cared for them, conversations the parents had when they thought the children were sleeping. "How do you know these things?" he asked softly, approaching the bed. The girl awoke slowly, as if emerging from a deep trance. "Daddy, I was dreaming. I dreamed I was flying and visiting places far from here." "What kind of places?" "Sad places with many sick children. But I helped them get better, just like I helped my brothers." Her words came out naturally, without the slightest awareness that she had revealed something impossible. "Do you remember helping your brothers?" Her expression returned to normal childishness. "They were never sick, Daddy. We've always played together since I got here." Concerned about these strange manifestations, he decided to hire a discreet investigation into the girl's past. He used part of his wealth to pay the best private investigators in the area, instructing them to uncover any information about her origin before arriving at the orphanage. What they discovered left him completely shaken. The girl had been found at the age of 2, in critical condition, in an accident that killed her biological parents. She remained in a coma for 8 months in a public hospital on the outskirts of the city, sharing a room with dozens of other children with disabilities similar to those his sons had had. During this period, all the other children in the room gradually passed away, one by one, except for her. The medical record showed something even more shocking. She had awakened from the coma exactly on the same day and at the same time that his sons took their first steps in the private hospital. The temporal coincidence was too precise to be casual. When he confronted the nurses at the public hospital, they reported disturbing memories. Throughout the period that the girl was unconscious, other patients and family members reported strange dreams where they saw her walking through the corridors at night, visiting each bed and whispering words of comfort to the sick children. "It was impossible, of course," explained one of the older nurses. "She was connected to machines in a deep coma. But so many people reported the same vision that we started to find it strange. And whenever someone dreamed about her, the sick child had a more peaceful night. The most disturbing thing of all was discovering that she had fled the hospital at the exact moment that his sons began to walk, as if she knew instinctively that her mission there was complete. The security cameras showed a small figure quietly leaving through the back door, but the images were too blurry to confirm if it was really her. Now, watching the girl play innocently with her brothers in the mansion's garden, the millionaire questioned himself about the real nature of the child he had brought into his home, and about the price he might still have to pay for a miracle that defied all the laws of science and reason. The investigators brought more disturbing discoveries in the following weeks. Medical records from different hospitals in the area showed an inexplicable pattern. In the last 2 years, several children with motor impairments had presented miraculous recoveries, always preceded by the appearance of a small girl who then disappeared mysteriously. The millionaire spent sleepless nights studying the reports. In each case, the descriptions were similar. A frail child, appearing younger than her real age, who approached desperate families offering help in exchange for money. Always the same amount, $1,000, and always the same impossible result. Cures that medicine considered unachievable. He decided not to reveal his findings to anyone, fearing that medical or scientific authorities would take his adopted daughter to subject her to invasive experiments. He kept all the documents in a safe in his mansion, along with his most valuable investments in gold and high-yield applications. During the following months, family life followed a seemingly normal routine. The girl grew healthy and happy, playing with her brothers, attending private lessons, demonstrating exceptional intelligence for her age. But the strange episodes continued to happen with increasing frequency. One early morning, he found her in the garden, sitting under the ancient tree that dominated the center of the grounds. She hummed a melody he couldn't identify, her eyes fixed on the stars as if she were having a silent conversation with something beyond his understanding. "Can't sleep, honey?" he asked, sitting down next to her. "The other children call me at night," she replied naturally. "They need help, but they're too far from here." "What other children?" "The ones who are suffering. I feel when they cry." Her words were spoken with a sadness too mature for her age. "But now I need to stay here with you. This is my new family." During the following day, he discreetly monitored her activities. The girl seemed completely normal during meals and playtime, but occasionally stopped and looked in the direction of the city, as if she were perceiving something that no one else could feel. It was during one of these observations that he received an unexpected call. It was the administrator of a children's hospital in the metropolitan area, requesting an urgent meeting. When he arrived at the location, he was led to the pediatric neurology department, where he found a scene that left him breathless. Dozens of children with motor impairments were hospitalized there, many of them in serious condition. But that wasn't what had caught his attention. It was the fact that several of these children were obsessively drawing the same figure. A small girl with dark hair, always represented with a light around her. "It started a few weeks ago," explained the responsible neurologist. "The children report dreams where this girl visits them, promising that they will be all right. Initially we thought it was just coincidence, but the pattern is too specific to be casual." The millionaire examined the drawings with his heart racing. Each stroke perfectly represented his adopted daughter, captured with details that only someone who lived with her daily could know. "Have any of these children shown signs of improvement?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. "Interestingly, yes. 3 of them have presented involuntary movements in recent weeks. Movements that technically should be impossible considering their neurological conditions." When he returned home that night, he found the girl more restless than usual. She had spent the day drawing, but this time they weren't the colorful and cheerful drawings she usually made. They were detailed representations of hospital corridors, beds with sick children, complex medical equipment. "Where did you see these places?" he asked, showing her the drawings. "In my dreams," she replied simply. "I fly there every night to help." 2.5 years after the initial events that had changed their lives, on an ordinary afternoon while they were playing in the mansion's garden, something fundamental changed. The girl approached him with the same serene expression she had on the day at the hospital, that mature and knowledgeable presence that had disappeared since the adoption. "Daddy," she said, and for the first time in a long time, her eyes carried that strange gleam that he remembered from their first meeting. "My mission here is almost complete." His blood ran cold. "What are you talking about, honey? You and the boys won't need me soon. You've learned to be a real family, to take care of each other, and they are completely healed. But you're part of this family now. This is your home." She smiled with a wisdom that transcended her physical age. "I always carry a little bit of each family I help in my heart, and you will always carry a little bit of me too. But there are other children waiting, other families who need the hope that I can bring." That same night, she disappeared silently from her room, leaving only a small drawing she had made. 4 figures holding hands under a radiant sun, with a 5th smaller figure moving away towards other children who seemed to be waiting for her in the distance. The millionaire and his sons searched for her for weeks, using all their fortune and connections to find her. They discovered that she had been legally transferred to a family in another region, people who had lost a daughter of the same age in an accident, and who coincidentally also had a son with motor impairments who was now showing signs of inexplicable recovery. The transfer papers were legitimate, signed by competent authorities, but no one could explain how the process had been completed so quickly or who had mediated the situation. Years later, when his sons were already healthy and successful teenagers, the millionaire finally understood the true nature of what they had experienced. Regardless of scientific or supernatural explanations, the love, hope, and faith that the little girl had brought into their lives were real and transformative. She had taught them that true miracles happen when we open our hearts to care for each other, that the deepest healing comes from unconditional love and the ability to believe in the impossible when it comes to protecting those we love. His sons grew up being examples of compassion and generosity, using part of the family inheritance to create foundations that helped needy children around the world. And although they never saw the mysterious girl again, each act of kindness they practiced was a way of honoring the legacy of hope she had left in their lives. The millionaire kept the drawing she had left forever, remembering daily that some angels walk among us disguised as needy children, teaching us that true wealth is not in the assets we accumulate, but in the ability to transform lives through love and faith in the impossible.